Come, Holy Spirit, and kindle in our hearts the fire of your love. Please be seated. There's a new book out by Dr. Mariana Chilton, professor of public health at Drexel University, called The Painful Truth About Hunger in America. I haven't read it yet, but I did catch an interview with her about it. She says the book has a simple idea. Hunger isn't about food, it's about power. She says, the earth generates enough food and enough resources for everyone, but the powerful and the wealthy want to profit off the abundance. So they make food scarce for most people around the globe so they can charge money for it. It's important to remember, she says, that hunger is man-made. Hunger is caused by inequality, discrimination, greed, and hoarding. She goes further to say, hunger is by design. It is as American as apple pie. I think this idea is also true about other major problems of our time. Homelessness is not about housing, it's about power. Poverty is not about the lack of opportunity or resources, it's about power. You can bet that wherever you find these problems and others like them, particularly where they are intense, power is the root cause. Haiti comes to mind, where France and the United States bear much of the responsibility for the violence over the last century in that place. So does Gaza and Ukraine, but also here in Madison and throughout Connecticut. One of the major themes of the Gospels is the abundance of God. We read about it often. In Luke, for example, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put in your lap. In God's creation, there is enough, more than enough. But in their quest to dominate, the powerful among us take God's abundance and make it scarce. They do this deliberately, with malice of forethought, so as to profit off that scarcity. And I would go on to say that all of this is fundamental to what it is to be human. We desire. Now, desire is not a bad thing. God has desires too. But humanity's strongest, most twisted, and most destructive desire is the power to dominate. I'm struck in that the opening prologue to the Lord of the Rings movie, the elf Galadriel, tells the story of the forging of the great rings, 7 to the dwarf lords, 3 to the elves, and 9 rings were gifted to the race of men who above all else desire power. Of course, when we think of power, we imagine that we would use it as a force of good. I steamed around the world in submarines for 26 years with that nugget of hope in my heart. We're the good guys, and we're bringing the blessings of democracy and free markets to the world. I'm not sure the Haitians see that way, or the Iranians. I'm sure that notion that we are the good guys animated James and John when they went to Jesus asking for a major share of power in the future kingdom of God. We're the good guys, and together with the Messiah, we will conquer the Romans and establish God's kingdom on earth. Of course, in their imagination, the tools of domination that this version of the Messiah would use would have to be the very same tools that the Romans used: weapons, armies, siege engines. And once you begin dealing out death, well, you become what your enemies are. Good seems to walk away, and what you're left with on every side is violence and killing and death. Jesus knows this and sets it on its head. You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. Here's one of the few places in the Gospels where I think Jesus has the Romans in mind. Arrogance and tyrannical rule are the Roman ways of power. But it's not so among you, he says. Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be the first among you must be the slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. This is the exercise of power through powerlessness. An important point here. Note that he says, whoever wishes these things. That speaks to human desire. It gets to something that's the core of what we are as humans. Jesus does not condemn desire, but he sets out a very radical path towards satisfying it, a path that was probably hard for James and John to get their heads around. Indeed, they never did until after the resurrection. It's hard for us too. Dr. Chilton talked about her own lesson in powerless power. She said, many of us are conditioned to believe that if we do well in school, if we read books and do well on tests, without really trying things out in the real world, that we have some sort of expertise. I was arrogant like that, she says, coming out of Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania. When I wanted to do public health work with the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho people in Oklahoma, I thought I had something to offer. The Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Health Board laughed me out of the room when I approached them with the original topic for my dissertation. It was something useless, like training in cross-cultural communication, as though that would help, when their greatest needs were a new hospital, a dialysis unit, and free crutches. They knocked some sense into me right away. They demanded that I approach working with them out of love for their people, and that I not try to get anything out of it, like a PhD. There you go. The Cheyenne and the Arapaho get it, after intense suffering, I might add. Do your work out of love for the people and not try to get anything out of it. How exactly do you get to a place where you have love for the people? Well, slowly, I think. Love starts small and grows over time. Can't be rushed. Can't bind it to a schedule or to a to-do list. And you have to enter into the stories of the people you're learning to love. Storytelling is the key. Having authentic conversations, listening to heartbreak and anger and frustration, and listening vulnerably, telling your own stories, and listening and telling without judgment, without trying to fix them or advise them or set them straight. In my own day-to-day work as a hospital chaplain, this is exactly what I try to do. I enter into the patient's story. I listened to a young woman the other day who tried to commit suicide and felt frustrated and angry that she wasn't successful. I listened to the things she was contending with and to the hopelessness she feels about life. I wasn't there to make her feel better or feel hope or feel differently. That's not spiritual care. I was there to help her say out loud, maybe for the first time, the authentic things that were on her heart, so that her own inner teacher could do the critical healing work within her. There's a funny thing I find over and over as I listen to people's authentic stories. I fall in love with them. And I think that's what happens to all of us who experience authentic stories. We can't help it. In their stories, we find our own. In their tears, our own tears might fall. I think that was Dr. Chilton's experience with the Cheyenne and the Arapaho people. I think that might be your own. One of the practices I love during our vestry meetings is that we begin each meeting with a period of authentic storytelling, usually prompted by a question that someone's asked to bring. They are beautiful stories. Sometimes there are tears, often enough my own, and sure enough, one of the things that happens is that we love one another. I think one of the greatest strengths of your vestry here at St. Andrew's is the love they have for one another and for you. And storytelling practices like this are one of the reasons. From my perspective, if we did nothing else at vestry meetings, this would be a total victory. Now, I see Sharia squirming in the pews here, and it's true that we need to fix the leaky roof, mow the grass, and pave the parking lot. But you know what? Because we love one another, we do those things out of the love that we have for the people here, without trying to get anything out of it. Those things all get done out of love. I think that's what the Cheyenne and the Arapaho had in mind. I think that's what Dr. Chilton learned, and I think that's what Jesus is trying to tell his disciples. The kind of servant leadership Jesus is calling for is grounded in love. One of our vestry members told a story at the last meeting about a discussion circle they formed up at their workplace where people could come together for a while and talk. There's no agenda, and it has become quite a thing. People have shown up every week to tell their own stories and to listen to others. I'm guessing that the same thing is happening in this circle of colleagues that's happening in our own vestry. The stories are becoming more authentic as people begin to feel safe with sharing and being vulnerable. And they're falling in love with one another. Can you imagine that happening at your own workplace? I think there's probably a similar thing happening on Wednesday mornings here at St. Andrew's. It's a pretty regular crew who shows up to be fed by one another's stories. Jesus is inviting us to unlearn what leadership means and how it's used, and to approach leadership with a fresh beginner's mind. There's much more to say about powerless power, but if we want to change the world's mind about power, we have to change the story. And that begins with the stories we share with one another. So go out and share with your neighbors your stories, your co-workers, and maybe here at St. Andrew's. Don't be surprised if you fall in love. That might just be the path towards servant leadership for you.